Okay, I just got back from our Fantasy Flock Network meetup. Had a great time. Thank you for everybody who came out. But I was talking to someone named Cheeky Opson in the chat, and he was telling me that his biggest issue in Dynasty is not really knowing how to evaluate rookie picks. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to just get 10 trades that involve rookie picks in Dynasty and say which side I prefer. And I'm really hoping that this gives you a better idea of what an early first is worth, what a late first is worth, what's your mid-second worth, and hopefully I don't make a fool of myself. But before we get into anything, make sure you go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football, and of course, if you want to get in a draft with us, if you want to check out any of these player props, my favorite player prop this week is actually going to be Trevor Lawrence going up against the Chiefs, more than 273.5 total yards. You can sign up for Underdog Fantasy with the link in the description, the link in the comment section. When you sign up for Underdog with promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. And with the minimum of a $10 deposit, you are going to get our 2023 Dynasty rankings. So make sure you take advantage of that. But I think that should be it. Let's go through. Let's dive into our first trade. And this one's actually a Justin Fields deal where you actually have Justin Fields being traded for Ryan Tannehill and the rookie pick 105. Now, I'm automatically going to assume that every trade we see, unless specified otherwise, is a 12-team Superflex trade because I think that's the majority of the formats that people are playing in. And of course, in that format, Justin Fields will be worth significantly more than if it was a one-quarterback league. And with Justin Fields, we can all agree when he is on the field, it doesn't matter how good he is from a real life standpoint. He is a phenomenal fantasy asset. The man's going out and breaking records running the football, and we know that's the number one cheat code at the quarterback position in fantasy. But when it comes to Justin Fields, I do have a very serious drawback, and this is not guaranteed to happen. I mean, we tweeted this out about a month or two ago, and every single person felt the need to say that I was the dumbest person in the world, blah, 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 blah. That I think when we look at Justin Fields and what he has done through the first 2 years of his NFL career, while yes, he has been given the worst situation you could ever imagine, he has been very bad from a real life standpoint. Like I said, horrible situation. You can't blame the guy. But if the Chicago Bears fall in love with Bryce Young at 1, I would not be too surprised if they end up taking Bryce Young and trading away Justin Fields, which maybe that's a good thing for Justin Fields. And I'm not saying this is what they should do. I'm not saying this is what they're going to do. But I think we need to be honest with each other and say that this is a team that just had the fewest passing yards per game that we've seen in NFL history, or at least since 2009, 15 years almost. This is a team that earned the number one overall pick. To assume that anybody here has a guaranteed starting job next season, in my opinion, is a little aggressive. So, not saying Chicago should get rid of him, but I think it's a possibility. And for that reason, when we see Justin Fields going in the first round of Dynasty startup drafts, that's a little too rich for me. But if we could get Justin Fields for the 105 and Ryan Tannehill, at this price point, I would go take Justin Fields because obviously that rushing upside is a little bit too much to pass up on. Let's go over to our next trade. This one's going to be involving some picks that are literally meaningless. This is DeAndre Swift and Brandon Ayuk versus Russell Wilson and T. Higgins. In my opinion, T. Higgins is the best asset here. I would rather have T. Higgins over DeAndre Swift. I'd rather have T. Higgins over Brandon Ayuk. And if we're going to be looking at Russell Wilson versus Ayuk, assuming it's a 12-team Superflex league, while Russell Wilson was arguably a bottom 5 starting quarterback in the NFL this season, unlike Justin Fields, there is something that guarantees his job security this next year and the year after that. It's like $150 million guaranteed, okay? They have no other option but to throw out Russell Wilson, regardless of how bad he may or may not be. So Russ still has some dynasty value. I mean, we're pretty much seeing him valued at his floor, in my opinion. I don't know if the ceiling's much higher than he currently sits, but I really wanted to pull up this trade to tell you, if you are involving massive pieces in deals such as DeAndre Swift and T. Higgins, when I'm looking at trades like this, that 4th round pick, that 3rd round pick is literally garbage. I don't look at it. I don't consider it. It's meaningless. Okay, so let's get that out there. Do not be valuing picks in that range. It's just long shots from there. Now, going over to our next deal, we're going to be looking at Jakobi Meyers, the 109, and a future third for Tony Pollard, Daniel Bellinger, as well as Jordan Mason. And I think if we're going to break this down, we can say maybe Daniel Bellinger's worth, say, the future third and a little bit more. Really, this trade comes down to, in my opinion, the two biggest pieces being Tony Pollard versus the 109. And if you were playing in a one quarterback format, where at that 109, you're not going to have Will Levis, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young pushing players down the board. Instead, you're going to just be looking at a worse talent pool at running back and receiver compared to you would in a super flex league. There, the pick's not going to be worth as much, in my opinion. And I'm going to be fine if you wanted to go ahead and take the Tony Pollard side. But if you're playing in that super flex league, you have to consider that you may have 4 quarterbacks going before that 109 pick. So it's almost equivalent to the 105 in a one quarterback league. And at that point, I would easily prefer the 109. So I think this trade is a good example of your format really mattering and how you're going to value those rookie picks compared to a position like running back, knowing that super flex is going to inherently make that pick more valuable. But going over to our next one, we're looking at a 10-team Superflex league where you start 13 guys. So pretty deep. It's very similar to a 12-team league where you start 11 players, which I think we're all used to. Trading Jonathan Taylor and Rashad Bateman for the 108, 308, and T. Higgins. Going back to what we were discussing earlier, the 308 doesn't matter. We're looking at assets as big as Jonathan Taylor, so just throw that 308 in the garbage. If we're going to be breaking this down from a Jonathan Taylor versus T. Higgins standpoint, in my opinion, while Jonathan Taylor is taking a significant fall from where he stood 12 months ago, I would still rather have Jonathan Taylor over T. Higgins quite easily. And if we're going to be looking at Bateman versus the 108, in this format in particular, it's probably easily the 108 for me. So honestly, I think it's a pretty fair deal based on the plummet Rashad Bateman's had down dynasty rankings. And I wouldn't mind if you wanted to say this is up to your personal preference. And now going over to our next one, this is a deal where we're getting Jalen Waddle, trading away the 111, the 301, and George Pickens. Now, the 301 has some value. Keep in mind that's more so at the beginning of the third round. Still not a super valuable draft pick. And so I'm more so looking at this as we are paying to upgrade from George Pickens to Jalen Waddle, and we're giving up the 111 to do so. And in my opinion, hell yeah, I'm willing to do this. Obviously, if you're playing in a deeper dynasty league where you have to start 11, 12 guys and it's super flex, at that point, you're going to prioritize depth just a little bit more than you otherwise would. But to look at what Jalen Waddle's done through the first 2 years, and at the same time, looking at, well, yeah, George Pickens had some highlight grabs year one. In reality, George Pickens at the end of the day did not command volume. While he was efficient with the targets he received, still not a good rookie season. The 111 is going to be that tier drop off where you're not going to be looking at the chance of getting someone like a CJ Stroud. You're not going to be looking at a shot of getting someone like Jahmyr Gibbs. So honestly, I think we would prefer going with Jalen Waddle with that deal. And going over to our next one, we have someone trying to trade Treylon Burks and their late first for the 101. Going back to what we were discussing earlier, that late first, that 111 type pick is just a significantly different asset than what you're going to be looking at with those true early first like the 101. So if you could pull it off, you definitely do it. Go get the 101, but I doubt you can. Now our next one, you're receiving Devonta Smith and the 108 and a future second round pick, decent amount of value for George Pickens and the 104. I think this is a very interesting trade. If we break this down piece by piece, I think we can say you'd probably rather have, or definitely rather have, George Pickens over a future second. Now, full transparency, I don't think there's some massive difference between the two. If someone offered me in a 12-team Superflex league a future first for George Pickens, I'd probably rather have the first round pick. Maybe I'm not giving Pickens enough credit, but you'd rather have Pickens than the second. I think it's in the right ballpark, though. I don't think you're too far off. And then if you're going to be looking at the 104 versus Devonta Smith, as well as the 108. I think here you probably prefer Smith in the 108 slightly. I understand a lot of people are going to say, oh, Mason, it's Smith and the 108 easily. I'm just trying to be fair to see both sides of it. If you think at the 104, you're going to get Jahmyr Gibbs and you think he's some transcendent talent, and at the 108 instead, you're going to be looking at a Jordan Addison. If you're lucky and you're not nearly as excited about that, then maybe I could sell the 104 here. In reality, I think this is another great example of a fair trade and really coming down to your personal preference on how you're trying to build your dynasty team. I would love for you to go to the comment section and let me know what you think with that deal, because, I mean, in my opinion, it's very, very interesting. Now, our next one here is going to be the 103 for Christian Watson and the 108. I really like this deal as well, and I hate to keep on giving this cop-out answer, but I think this almost depends a little bit on your format. I will say most formats, give me the 103 here. Give me the elite level asset. Here at the 103, you may be getting Bryce Young in that 12-team Superflex draft versus, obviously, 108. We just talked about being someone like Jordan Addison, maybe being a Quentin Johnson. But when we're looking at Christian Watson, I think his value almost depends on the league that you're playing in. Whereas if you're playing in a league where you only start 8 guys, you can only start 3 to 4 wide receivers. Well, Christian Watson definitely has upside to be a difference maker. It's not like guaranteed that he is going to be the make or break, guaranteed difference maker in your season. Whereas if you're playing in a league where you have to start 11, 12 guys, where getting any starting wide receiver is extremely difficult, then yeah, you probably prefer Christian Watson and the depth. So in general, I would probably take the 103 side here, unless you're playing in an incredibly deep league where you are very, very excited about jamming in Christian Watson every week. But going over to our next deal, we're going to be looking at Kyler Murray versus Treylon Burks and the 105. Now, my initial reaction with this was, oh, give me Kyler Murray easily. I mean, this isn't even a thought. But if I'm sitting here thinking about it a little bit more, I do see the merit in both sides. I still probably prefer Kyler Murray, assuming 12-team Superflex. But if we are realistic with ourselves, that 105 is probably CJ Stroud or something of that sort. So if you think it's maybe a CJ Stroud and Treylon Burks versus Kyler Murray, and you're very worried about Kyler Murray tearing his knee up near the end of the season, very worried about Kyler Murray missing a chunk of games next year, and then at the same time when he comes back possibly not being 100%, worried about a coaching change, worried about the fact that he may not run the ball as much, worried about the fact that you may have DeAndre Hopkins sent out of Arizona. There are reasons to definitely be lower on Kyler Murray this offseason than you've had to be on Kyler Murray over the past few. So I want to say it's easily Kyler here. I think it's probably Kyler Murray, but still a somewhat fair deal. Now, going over to our next one, we are going to be looking at Chris Olave, the 105, the 205, versus Tony Pollard as well as Breece Hall. Now, this one, I don't have to think about too much. I think we can all agree you'd rather have Tony Pollard versus the 205. I would probably rather have Breece Hall over Chris Olave in the 105 as well. Now, I know Chris Olave was a great rookie, but to see how damn good Breece Hall was his rookie season, when we already had him in our prospect profile looking like an Ezekiel Elliott, Jonathan Taylor level prospect, I'm willing to just go all in. I'm willing to say that Breece Hall could arguably be the #1 overall running back in Dynasty and take him here. Now, our next one, we're going to be looking at Debo Bateman as well as Rachaad White. For Goddard, KJ Hamler, who at this point, sad to say, Hamler's nothing. The 108, 308, 211, and the 109. So if I'm going through, I'm pretty much saying the 308, KJ Hamler, the 211, not worth much at all. And really, instead, we should just be focusing in on what we have between the 108, 109, which if I'm breaking this down, give me the 108 over Rashad Bateman. Give me the 109 over Rachaad White. I'm not really thinking about either of those too much. And if we're looking at Debo versus Goddard, yeah, give me Debo Samuel. But if it's a tight end premium format, I probably would rather have the flexibility that we get with all these draft picks throughout the course of the rest of the offseason. So if it's a 12-team Superflex league, I'm probably going to take the 108, 109 side because I think the picks are actually going to accrue in value. Now, our last one we're looking at, someone traded away the 101 and Jahan Dotson for Justin Jefferson and James Cook in a 1-quarterback league. So here you have, I mean, Bijan Robinson is someone that I really want to root for. Hook'em Lawrence, of course. But you got to take Justin Jefferson easily. Yeah, I mean, even if Bijan Robinson is 100% who we think he will be, you still prefer Justin Jefferson in Dynasty. Jahan Dotson, James Cook, about the same. So I think we are going to go ahead. We're going to take the Justin Jefferson side here, especially with Devin Singletary not being under contract next season. But I think that's all I got for you. Please, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty. If you want to get in a draft with us, make sure you go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code FLOCK when you sign up. They'll match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. You can also check out all these cool player props. Look at the Trevor Lawrence, more than 273.5 total yards. And when you sign up with promo code FLOCK, not only are they going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $200, but you'll also get our 2023 Dynasty rankings. But I think that's all I got for you. Thank you again. I appreciate you and hope you have a great day.